Welcome to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast. I'm your host, Kojo Bafo, and this podcast is an extension of my book, also called Listen to Your Footsteps, which is a collection of essays, reflections, and poetry on things like fatherhood, identity and belonging, growing up, creativity, and the lessons learned. The purpose of this podcast is to gain insight and learn from the journeys that others have taken. I explore the worlds of art, culture, design, business, creativity, and life from the perspective of Africans who are contributing to the redefinition of the continent and who we are. My guest for today is Rémy Ngamije, a Rwandan-born Namibian writer and photographer whose debut novel, The Eternal Audience of One, has been garnering great reviews globally. He's the founder, chairperson, and art administrator of Duke, an independent arts organization in Namibia supporting the literary arts. He's also the editor-in-chief of Duke Literary Magazine, Namibia's first and only literary magazine. I first came across Rémy on social media, and over the last couple of years have built a relationship on what I hope is mutual respect. In this conversation, we talk about his Rwandese roots, life in Namibia, his process when it comes to writing, and so much more. To be honest, there were parts where I felt like he was the host of this podcast because he threw as many questions my way as I did his. Enjoy. Okay, so firstly, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of finding my way through this entire journey, but for me, it's also the opportunity to be able to have conversations with people. And I also didn't want to make it South Africa centric, more continental. And that's because, I mean, my background and my roots, for example, I grew up in Lesotho and I grew up in Maseru. And I just jumped into recording because we were starting to talk about cities and starting to talk about Joburg as a city, and I have a lot of views around that. But what's interesting for me with this city is, I mean, I found that most of us actually don't come from here.
Yeah.
So,
that's the weird thing.
So when you're saying your experiences of, not everybody's from Joburg, but actually Joburg often feels like it's made up of people who are not from Joburg. And, I'm a small town boy. I come from Maseru. And I actually wrote about this in my book, where even the way I live in Joburg now, I mean, I live in a particular area. I've been in that area for about 15, 16 years. I go to the same places. So it's interesting getting your sense of, coming from Windhoek and then coming to Joburg.
Yeah, no, when I visited, it was the weirdest thing. I came, first of all, in December the first time, and someone said, "Oh no, you got Joburg, like it's quiet now because everyone's gone home." And I'm looking around like at these crowded streets, and I'm like, "What do you mean everyone's gone home?" And then like and then the Uber driver said the best thing is like, exactly what you said. Everyone from Joburg is like from everywhere else. They're there to work, to make a living. And then, in the holidays, they go to wherever it is that they're from. Either they're from somewhere else in Gauteng, somewhere else in Mpumalanga, somewhere else in Polokwane or whatever. Like, no, we go home when we're not working. And that was like an interesting aspect of Joburg to find out, because Windhoek is like the opposite. Like, even though there's a lot of people from here, from the north or from the south who are here for work, most of the people in Windhoek stay in Windhoek. But coming to Joburg was, I can't lie, man, it was such a refreshing experience. I loved the traffic, the hustle, the bustle, the variety of things going on. And just I'm not going to lie to you, Kojo, it was the first time being around such relentless Black energy. It was... over here, in Windhoek, we struggle very, very, very heavily with dealing with whiteness and then with Black expression. It's a very, very big thing here. But in Joburg, I was like, people are just opening up dope spots like this and just carrying on with their lives. Was interesting. And I can't lie to you that energy inspired a lot of the things that I've been busy with in the past 3 years. Just knowing that things like literary festivals, it's all possible to organize them, knowing that it's possible to have a dope spot like this place called Thesis, that I think was that was my first experience of Joburg. I landed, my friend took me straight to Thesis. That was
to one spot in Soweto,
Yeah, man. And I was like, how do you just have a dope spot like this? And then I was just like, it's possible. You might take some time. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but this energy is possible, man. And so, yeah, I can't lie. I have nothing but fond memories of Joburg. And so even my feeling of it is not, maybe it's not authentic. I have a visitor's view of Joburg, and yours might be quite different. Yeah.
But I think also, I mean, that's the interesting thing about cities, right? Look, so yeah. I believe that every city has its own rhythm, right? Every city has its own life, and so for example, coming from Maseru and coming to Joburg, and also when I used to go back, the more I became a Joburger, when I went back, it was also remembering that Maseru has a different rhythm, so I can't take that Joburg energy and that Joburg rhythm back to Maseru because it won't work, right? And I also studied I did my university in Durban, and recognizing that every space has its own rhythm. But yeah, cities are fascinating things. I mean,
how did you cope with the rhythm changes? How did you, like you as a person? How did you cope with those rhythm changes?
So how I approach it is I tend to, and I don't know whether it's kind of by nature as a person, but I tend to go into spaces and try and figure out the energy. So I guess also being an introvert, I prefer to slide into a room rather than, walk into the center of the room and go, hey, I am here. And I have friends like that, and my wife is more like that. She's extroverted. So because of that, I like to take my time and figure it out. So I try not to impose. And when I used to travel a lot, that's one of the things that I did. You get to a place, and if you have to judge it or if you have to measure it, you measure it on the basis of itself, as opposed to in comparison. So I generally look for the thing that I connect with in a space. So in terms of those energy changes, it's never really been a problem for me. I mean, like when I MC stuff, or if I'm going to an event, but particularly when I used to MC and speak in something, I'd want to arrive early and kind of be in the room as people are coming in, because you get a sense of, you start to tap into that energy, that flow of that particular place, as opposed to coming in with any kind of idea of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you can see, I can automatically hear you're just more mature than I am, because I am not good at that, sussing out the energy of a place, because I have not yet learned the fine, mature art of growing where you are planted.
Well, I think, sometimes the years add up, and as the years add up, you actually gain some wisdom in it. You're not always guaranteed it'll happen, but sometimes it does happen.
Yeah, no word. I can guarantee you, I've been in Namibia since '96, and I am still struggling to come to terms with its rhythm. But you know what? I figured out that, and when I say Namibia, I just really mean, I'll narrow down the scope and say Windhoek, because this is what I call home now. I don't want to speak for the rest of the country, but I struggle to find a rhythm here, because I realize the place is also finding its own rhythm. It's still trying to shape its own identity. It's still trying to figure out what kind of city it is. It's still trying to figure out, so do we like this or do we like that? What are we in the summer? What are we in the winter? That is still very, very, it's still up. And then, of course, there's all of these generational changes. There's all of these youth running around, man. And then there's the old guard. There's a lot of clashes happening in the city. And I can't lie and say that it is interesting to see how those things are shaping the energy around it. And I think in the past 3 years, I've enjoyed that a lot more, seeing the clashes and the way those things are now shaping the social and cultural life of the city. And then, of course, this pandemic has been devastating. And that's another important geographic shaper as well. So, but Kojo, I'm not lying to you, man. Ooh, every time the airplane lands into Joburg, you just you get the itch, man. Like you just see city for miles and just like, we're in a big city now. I love it. I cannot lie. I love it, love it, love it.
But I mean, I think that's where the positive lies, right? In that, for example, you talk about Windhoek and you're talking about kind of that as a space is redefining itself and figuring itself out. And I think the history of Namibia is tied to that. Just like the history of South Africa is, South Africa is still trying to figure itself out. As a city, so for example, as a city, Johannesburg has, we have a sense of who we are and what we're trying to do. And I call it the city where it's a city of dreams, like unfulfilled dreams, broken dreams, dreams that are still wishes. And other cities have kind of a different energy. But it is tied to the history of the country because it's still a very young country. And in reality, Namibia is not that much, it's not that much older in terms of gaining independence.
Not at all. Yeah, not at all. We're still on the journey, man. We're still dealing with very recent history, and even, we're dealing with very, very distant history, or I would say, according to my young life, we're dealing with the recently talked about genocide in Namibia. Yeah. So not only are we dealing with this, but we're also dealing with very, very distant history, I think. And so that is an interesting conversation to have within the city space. But you know what? Joburg gives me the itch whenever it lands. You're like, oh, things are about to happen, things are about to move, And then when I land in Cape Town, it's a different feeling. Cape Town, I feel a lot more intimately familiar with. Even after years of absence, I haven't been there in like about a while now. But whenever I land, I know exactly where things are. Even if things have closed or shifted, I'm just like, I know this place. It's a weird relationship that I have to those places. And I think that's what I like about Joburg, the strangeness, the otherness, I like not being from Joburg because I get to experience it like anew all the time. Yeah, man. It's crazy.
So one of the things that entertains me, amuses me, because it's something that I've grappled with a lot, is particularly as, let's call it as writers, how we write our bios.
Yeah.
And so yours is, so mine is very deliberate in terms of half German, half Ghanaian from Lesotho, based in South Africa, right? And I've had people go, why don't you just say, South African based or whatever? And it's like, no, it's important to me. So yours starts with Rwandan born in Namibia.
Yeah.
So you said you arrived in Windhoek or Namibia, let's say 1996. So what's the story before that?
Yeah, I'm very insistent about that Rwandan born because people need to realize that, I am not the ordinary Namibian. I was naturalized. I voluntarily became Namibian after many years of like trying to get citizenship only in 2016. But I've been here since 1996. Before that, my family, we lived in Nairobi in Kenya, which was again my real first taste of a big city. And Nairobi is like, it's full of nostalgic childlike memories. I don't really have memories of what it was like living there for my parents or for my family. I just remember kindergarten, standard 1, standard 2, my friends having a really good time. And then, of course, in and around this time, I was shielded a lot by my parents about what typical Nairobi life was like. So I only have nostalgic memories of that place. And then before that, we lived in Rwanda. I was born in Rwanda, and I am still Rwandan in the sense that I speak the language, I still identify with the history, with the culture. And it is the identity that I have had for the longest, even though it is technically the place that I have lived sort of like the list. At least, I left when I was about 6, and I'm 33 now, and I've spent more time here than I have in Rwanda. I spent more time studying and working in Cape Town for 7 years than I have in Rwanda. But I do not discredit where I was born and how it has shaped my life and what I can do, what I can't do, who I am now, who I aspire to be. And so it is always important to have that Rwanda-ness attached, because I have not let go and I can't let go. It's still part of, like you say, you're a small town boy from Maseru. You know, a lot of people who might not have had the luxury of moving around do not understand the importance of origin stories, or being half German or being half Ghanaian, how that really does shape the way you experience the world, the way you connect with people, your relationship to places. I think people from smaller towns are, what I would say, smaller places in the world are a little more, I think they can see bigger places for what they are as opposed to what they aren't. And I think that is something that's not really appreciated. So you can see both I think when from a smaller place, you can see both the majesty and the awesomeness that is Joburg, but you can also see this stuff some of it is like downright weird and maybe not right. And of course, Joburgers within the cityscape can see that. But when you're from outside, I think nothing teaches you about being from the outside like being from a small city or from a small place in the world. And so for me, all of my identities are small places in the world. Being Rwandan for a long time is having a small place in the world. You're defined by like one incident in world history. Your history is not understood. Your culture is not understood. And then being in Namibia is like also even within the SADC conversation, you're just from a small place. They're like, wow, Namibia, what's in Namibia? What's there? And you're like, us. Yeah, man. So my bio it's also, again, Kojo, it's a constant reminder for myself as well of how I came to writing, because I think it ends with Rémy Ngamije is a Rwandan Namibian writer and photographer. Writer and photographer are my dream nationalities. Those are like my countries without borders. You're a writer. You're a writer. I'm a writer. And it's wonderful to be in a community of writing with you and with Homer and with Shakespeare and with Chimamanda Adichie and Zakes Mda. But you know, how you come to this writing thing is actually also part of the journey, and it's important. So yes, we are all writers, but we're not all the same writers because we just have different origins.
Yeah.
And and it's a reminder for myself of that journey as well, not only as a mark of identity, but it's like, this is how I got here. Yes, I'm a writer, but when you say, how did you become a writer? It's like, well, let me tell you what. Yeah.
Because one of my questions was going to be, when did you decide that you're a writer? Because that's a journey in itself, right? Like you can write, but I want to start with, when did you decide you wanted to be a writer? And then when did you decide that you were a writer?
I wanted to be a writer from the very first time that I started learning English, because I saw from a very, very young age, landing in Namibia, not being a native English speaker, how this language and the ability to tell stories was how people made friends. And not being part of this language in which you could tell stories and tell your story, I felt excluded. So I was just like, I must learn this thing and be a part of it. I'm not going to lie to you. I literally wanted to be a writer from, let's say, about the second grade here in Namibia, because we had this thing called Story Hour, where you sat on a carpet with like all of your other little rugrats and they read to you, bruh. And it's like, I don't know whether you've seen little kids when they're being read to, but they are like mesmerized. You like literally control these kids for like however long you're reading the story. And we were read to from like very wonderful books like Roald Dahl. And And I remember landing and I couldn't speak. And I was like, what are these kids laughing at? I don't understand. I'm just lost. And I was like, I want whatever these kids are being a part of. And I think that's what drew me into reading. And then as soon as I could understand the language, I could read. And I was like, wait, this is the power of stories. Kids just make friends based on the books that they've read. I was like, nah, we gotta be part of this. And so I think from that aspect, being from going through primary school and high school and learning the language of English and learning the rules of writing, I think I equate that with being a writer, because those were my formative journeys. I wrote like the things that I read, and I read a lot of the things that I did read because I desperately needed to make friends. I needed to find my way in the world. I didn't have a home, I couldn't explain to people what home was because I hadn't had that experience.
Yeah.
And then I found that in a lot of the stories that I was reading. And then, Namibia, like any other place in the world, is very hostile to people who are not from that place. And so it was a case of like desperate need to learn about this place, learn about where I am. And then stories were like this neutral, imaginary place where you could be from, regardless of who you're from, who you could be. And then in that, you realize, wait, if you could have this power as a reader, then, why not extend it to writing? And I think in those, I won't pin it down to a specific instance, but I'll say all the way through primary school and all the way through high school, I've always wanted to write because it's been a desperate form of communication. Yeah. And then I would say I maybe became a writer the first time I told a lie on the page. And that was, again, early on in my life. We were forced to write these useless, what I think were useless back then, write about your weekend essays in the second and the third grade, where they're just trying to get Kojo to, for example, communicate, tell us about your weekend, where they try to get kids to just communicate. And for me, those essays were terrible, because it's like, guys, I have a lower middle class income. My weekends are the same. And so I can't, after 3 weeks of writing this thing, I'm like, guys, my life is just bland. To me, at least, it felt like bland. Now I look at it as wow, it was very creative. And I was getting these useless marks, man, getting 5 out of 10, 4 out of 10, teacher writing in her red ink. Rémy needs to be a little more imaginative. In my head, I'm like, it's not that I don't have an imagination. It's I'm poor, guys. I can't afford to go to the mall. Whatever the rich kids are having is not the existence that I'm having. And then I remember the one day I got so pissed off because I'm so competitive. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to lie. I'm going to say I went to the mall. I'm going to say my dad bought me this. We went to this place. We ate this. My friend, did I not get 8 out of 10 for this thing? And then after this was so this is what writing is.
So in a way, it actually wasn't useless. Maybe the teacher wasn't, or the teacher took you through that journey to go. Because I have kids. I have 2 kids, and I remember going through that phase, right? But it's going, okay, don't just go, I went to, I picked up. But how do you find the color in it, right? And so it just took you a little longer to get to the point where it's not about the act. I was an exchange student for Rotary after high school. And
you were part of the Rotary Club?
Yeah, my father was a Rotarian for many, many years.
I was part of the Rotary Club here as well, man.
Okay, so my father, so my father, he was a Rotarian for probably over 40 years. So after high school, I went to Germany as an exchange student. But as part of the evaluation or the judging process, we had a weekend in Bloemfontein. And at the dinner, one of the things that they did, so we had this dinner on a Saturday night, and they were like, okay, you're going to get given a white envelope. So it was one of those small, small envelopes. And in the envelope will be a piece of paper with a word or a phrase written on it. And you have, I think you had 2 minutes, and then you had to get up on stage and speak for 3 minutes. And I still remember mine was what was written there was the color blue. And I got up and I think I spoke for about 1.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then one of the other girls, she had the word yuck, Y-U-K.
Yeah.
They had to stop at the end of 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Because what she did was she talked about yuck. She talked about the type. She talked about the paper it was written on. She talked about the envelope.
Yeah.
And then went on that journey. And that was my lesson. Like, I look at that now and I'm just like, I would so kill that thing right now. Like, you'd have to stop me after an hour.
Yeah.
But because I was still constrained by, okay, they said there's a word on the page, so they said I'm going to do this, so I'm going to do this. And then realizing that, no, that's just your entry point.
Yeah, word. So I want to ask you the same thing, how you came to writing, but literally what you just outlined, I think for me, explains that how I came a writer thing. It wasn't about, Rémy, tell us the 10 things that you did in your weekend. You could express yourself and say, I thought about this, or I had this kind of dream.
Yeah.
It's so weird that we all immediately said, no, we went to the mall, we ate this, we cooked that. But, over time, those essays change because now you're writing about what you dreamt about or what you think about. And that, for me, was really where I was like, the page presents you with an alternative reality to whatever life is in the real world. And I've never lost the pleasure of writing, because when I write, I'm not me that's sitting down. I'm somebody else, and I'm tapping into other energies. But
so
how did you?
I am envious of you.
What?
Because I have a let's call it a love-hate relationship with writing.
Yeah.
And that's because I'm a working writer. So I wrote for magazine. I write for corporates. So for a very long time, people used to say to me, "It's so cool that your work is your passion." And when I was at magazine, I'm like, listen, like, this is my job. Like, if I don't write words, my children don't eat. It may seem extreme, but what it boils down to is very simply that. And so the majority of my writing has been that. And so because of that, I've become, I guess, cynical to a certain extent. And I don't explore the other side. I don't explore the other side as much. So I don't approach it with any type of, like, whether I enjoy it, I don't enjoy it, doesn't make a difference. It's like, I need to do it. And I'm still trying to get my head around that.
Yeah. You know what? When you say you're a working writer, I'm you have a love-hate relationship. My brother, welcome to the game. Not that you're not part of the game, but my brother, this is the game. Everyone has a love-hate with it. I think what I'm saying is that I love writing when I'm not writing for corporates, because I still have to do that. I love writing when I don't have to review copywriting, because I still have to do that. I love writing when I'm not, if I don't, like you, if I don't write, the lights go out in my house. The rent's gotta be paid. Everyone's got a life and gotta make a living and make their way through this life. So what I have found is that, once you have the gift of writing, or you think it's a talent, or you decide it's the way you're gonna make your way through the world, I think you need to reach a space where you're like, so this is my job, this is what I do to eat and live. And then you still need to find some part of you that enjoys the writing for itself. And I think for me, that's where literature comes in, because my dude, I hear you on that corporate writing hustle, man, because it's not easy and it can be draining and it's killing. But at the end of the day, weekend, if I have time, I'll be so thankful if I can, for example, work on a short story or something, that's not that other stuff. I came into the writing world like you through advertising, and that was brutal. I left that world after like 3 years, and I'm thankful that I've never gone back. And then I found other pleasures in writing through, for example, teaching high school English. That was an amazing trip, right? Like teaching high school English was a crazy adventure. And I did that for like about 3 years. But, like you, the hustle still remains. You still got to make a living. You still got to pay your way through life. And so I think, I don't know, I wanted to ask you, when you're writing your memoir, didn't that feel like a different kind of writing where you're like, this is writing for the first time? Maybe that's just like, this is for me. I want to explore this aspect of my life. That wasn't the loud part.
So the weird thing is that, not weird, but so I came to writing because my father always used to encourage me to put my thoughts down on the page. So I'd literally just kind of sit and write in a notebook, or I mean, he had a computer in his office, like the early days. Like this was mid 80s. And I would literally, after school, while I'm waiting to be taken home, sit there and type some stuff up on even the electric typewriter, like type some stuff up and then throw the stuff away. And it was literally just getting stuff out of my head. And gradually I started writing poetry. And then at school in English, I used to write these very, very long essays that I used to get very bad marks for. Purely because my English teacher, I remember my English teacher when I was doing my Form 6, used to say, I absolutely enjoyed reading the essay, but only 1 page out of 7 applied to the topic at hand. So I got bad marks, not for the quality of writing or the quality of thought, it's just because most of it had nothing to do with what I was supposed to be writing about. So then gradually it kind of became poetry, and I was in that space. But at the same time, I was working with my father, who was a management consultant. So I was helping write proposals, that sort of stuff. So for a very long time, there was a balance for me between the poetry, because I always wrote poetry. And then the kind of let's call it the work stuff. I used to write proposals for people. But the pendulum, I guess, started to switch when I was in the poetry scene, and it started becoming my job. So I was organizing shows. I was trying to get gigs. I was trying to get commissions, and I stopped enjoying that space. And eventually I left. I mean, I was like, I retired, and people still say you can't retire. And I'm like, well, I decided when I was a poet, so I can decide when I'm not a poet. And since then, I've been like, the pendulum swung totally the other way. So where I am now is trying to get it back. And so the reason why I say writing the book, which, they call it memoirs, but I still feel like I haven't lived long enough. But in writing the book, because I've always written columns. I know. That's how I met. That's how I found you on Twitter. So I've always written columns. I journal every day, so I do the morning page as well every day during the week. So literally, for me, the book it felt like an extension of that. And it's just about my experiences and the lessons that I've learned and my observations and that sort of thing. So it was that continuation. So I sit now and I look at, for example, how you write, in the writing that I'm coming across of yours. And or Mohale Mashiko, who's a very, very good friend. Carol.
Mohale is dope.
Yeah, so Carol is like very, very good friend. Like I met her when she was still a musician. And she was Black Porcelain and Carol. And then all of a sudden one day there's a book on the shelf and it's Mohale, right? But I read Intruders recently. Like it took me a while to get a copy of it, but I read Intruders recently. And after having written, so I've written probably thousands and thousands of words, but I never really felt like a proper writer because I didn't have a book. If that, like, it makes it makes no sense, but it makes sense.
Yeah, I hear you.
So having my first book, having finally kind of got my first book out, now I'm sitting and going, okay, maybe like fiction is starting to look really interesting. I've always written nonfiction. So it's like, so for about 4 months, I've been going, okay, I want to start writing short stories.
Yeah.
And I'm on that journey. To just figure it out in my head and then figure it out on the page. But I really feel like that's where the pendulum will actually start coming back, where I'll have something. I'll have something that's about the enjoyment of, the craft of it, like going through that journey of learning and figuring it out and all of that.
I don't think that's an unnatural journey. I think especially with your stuff, with your poetry, the one that you mentioned about organizing gigs and stuff like that. And there's a weird thing that I've seen with art, whatever art scene you're involved in, whatever artistic medium, is you get drawn in by the pull and the lure of this thing as expression or whatever it is, whether it's sculpture, and then the administration of art creeps in. And that is just it can be a soul-killing thing. So I totally understand why you left poetry. That's me and photography. When I was in Cape Town, I was doing a lot of corporate photography just because at the time it paid well. And I was a young student in Cape Town, put money in my pocket. And I had energy, I'll shoot your gig, I'll do your wedding, I'll do ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. And then when I moved back here, I was just like, I did not enjoy. I was good at it, but I did not enjoy it. And now it's been like a long walk to like some sort of like artistic redemption to try and like start producing photography for myself. And your poetry sounds like there's this ghost limb you've been carrying around and it's been looking for a way to come back in your life. And so I'm glad that you're writing your memoir, that you're exploring fiction, because I really think that thing maybe got stifled by the industry rather than the poetry itself. And so you might have been retired poet, but I think there's something there that's trying to break through, man. So I'm glad for you as a writer that you sat down and you got this project out firstly, because I think it's important for you to feel fulfilled as a writer. That's a hard thing that many people never reach. So power to you for sitting down and writing, because writing is hard, man. And my brother, we're like excited for like future works. We're looking forward to what's going to be on the bookshelf. Your book has taken long to get to Namibia, son, because of like COVID. Like the logistics this side are crazy. But soon and very soon.
Look, it's I think what moments like this, and it's an unusual moment, right? But what moments like this what they should do is force us to reflect on how we're living and why we're doing what we're doing. Like it's an opportunity. I mean, I always say, like, the joke is 2014, I remember 2015, 2016, people like, we need a reset. Like, we need a reset. This year has been crap. And then we go to the next year and then everybody's like, no, we need a reset. Last year was just a bad year. And then what happened? Beginning of 2019, the universe or whatever you believe in went, okay, Control Alt Delete. Here's a reset for you. And then it's like, no, wait, we didn't mean it like this. And it's like, well, we asked for it for how long? So we got it.
No, I hear you. I wanted to ask you personally, now that you have your memoir out, now that you have that physical entity of book, do you feel more like a writer with a capital W, or for you, does it feel like this is another step of the journey? Like, do you feel a little more fulfilled or accomplished? How did publishing affect you?
It's just another chapter for me.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's that.
I mean, so in 6 months, I turned 50. And I'm realizing the older I become. I mean,
I just realized that I missed my Kevin Hart moment to go, dang,
I actually watched that clip with Don Cheadle.
Yeah, I just missed it.
But yeah, like everything for me has always just been another chapter because I haven't built a career in a traditional sense. Like I've done different things over the years, and I always do what looks like it makes sense. And, you know, if I come across something, it's like, okay, am I trying to solve a short-term problem? If I'm trying to solve a short-term problem, this is what's in front of me. Well, I'm going to do it because of that. And I'm not going to do it because I'm trying to build a career or anything else. Like, I want to be able to sit on a beach in Ghana and just write stuff. You know, write for an hour, write 100 words and go, that's a productive day. Now I'm going to go chill. So that's the end goal. Like, I'm not trying to build, I'm trying to build a life as opposed to build a career or profession. So that book was, I mean, my publisher said to me, take a moment, because I was already like, okay, I've written the thing, you know, I'm thinking I want to try short stories. Like I was already thinking about like what's next. I mean, I was thinking about the promotion and okay, I need to rework my site and I need to do this and I need to do that because I come from a business background. But she then said to me, listen, I always recommend take 6 months after the book comes out to just like savor and enjoy the moment. But with COVID also, it's made it very weird. But yeah, no, I mean, it's another chapter. It's another step that takes me to the next place.
Now that's exciting to hear.
Let's get back to you. Now you're interviewing me.
This is a conversation, man. This is a conversation. It's not an interview. It's a conversation.
I mean, you're saying that when you get time, like for example, on a weekend, like you'll sit and work on a short story. What's your process? Do you have any kind of deliberate process?
My process is panic, my brother. So, you know that I spoke earlier about, I told you about the desperate need to communicate with like little kids when I was growing up and learning English and stuff. That desperate need to communicate has warped into something else right now. I think at this point in my life it's not desperate need to communicate, but it's like this fierce urgency of feeling like there's not enough time in my life or in the world to say the things that, to write about the things that I think about or say the things that I find meaningful to me, or to engage a reader in an interesting narrative of conversation. So there's this fierceness of like, time is running out.
Okay.
And I don't mean that in a negative way, like, to feel like, you gotta always be doing this because time is running out. It's just a realization that your time in this world is capped. And that's gonna go away. And I think it really all started in 2016, because in 2016, a very big thing in my life happened because my mom passed on. And I had been that whole year, my entire life, I've been talking about writing. I've been talking about, I want to write fiction. I want to write a novel. But like you, I guess in a way, all up until that point, the only writing of me that existed was, for example, copywriting or marketing copy, or the little blog that I ran, a couple of odd tweets here and there. And then in 2016, in July, I really boiled to a point of frustration where I was like, we're going to do this or we're not going to do it. And then I sat down and I started working on my novel. I'd never written a short story for publication before. I'd never written a poem. I wrote very bad poetry that's still lurking in like journals here. I did not know what this literary world was about, but I grew frustrated and angry at myself to the point that I started. So I started in June. My mom passed on in November. And so she didn't even get to
see the
work. She didn't get to see the work. She didn't get to see me become this thing that I said I always wanted to be, this thing that she had always encouraged. And so that feeling really, it's been with me since, where you're like, when you leave, have you done the work that you want to be known for, or that you, whatever, that sense has not left me. And so that informs my attitude towards writing. So right now, my time is very busy in the sense that it's preoccupied with things not related to writing, promoting your book, promoting your work, running Duk, the magazine, and the arts organization. I spend most of my time researching or writing proposals as well for funding, but also editing other people's work or drafting policies or creating projects for Duk, the arts organization. And that stuff takes a lot of time. But the reason, once all of those things fall away, there's this sense in the back of my head that, are you doing the thing that you want to be known for doing? And it's a source of comfort, because everything in my day right now is like, yes, everything that I'm doing is what I want to be doing, but I want to write. And so when I sit down to write, my process, after having gone through this panic where you're like, you're going to die, Kojo, you're going to die. After going through that panic of like, my time on earth is limited, I sit down, and usually it's often in the evenings, late at night, when it's quiet, it's me and the world. I sit down with like intense focus, knowing that I only have these 3 hours or these 2 hours to get this on the page. I often start, you say you keep morning pages, I have night pages. I whip out my Rémy fountain pen, I sit down and I draft bullet point ideas or witty sentences that I thought of, or things that I've heard, things that I've seen, and I put those down in like the cold dead of night when it's just me and these fucking mosquitoes, bro. And I just put that down as best as I can. And then based on those things that I put down in the evening, if they stick and if I think about them for a long time, you realize like, I think there's a story here. And then I develop that night after night or day after day, whenever I've got moments. But my process really starts off with that. I cannot lie. Now, now that we're talking about it, it's weird. This is the first time I voiced it with that panic, the panic of the universe, not like personal anxiety. It's just like, time is running out in your life or in the world or whatever. And then you sit down and you're like, so I'm going to write this story about a man called Kojo. And then every day you're thinking about this man called Kojo, you're trying to develop his character, you're thinking about where he is in the world, what are his anxieties or his fears or his desires, what does he look like, how does he speak? And essentially it's this familiarizing myself with myself and immersing myself in this other world. And that is the process. And I find the stories are better when the stakes are high, when I've got like, when the characters in it are going to either win a lot or lose a lot, or whether I as a writer, I'm risking a lot, as in like, this is a story that's where the stakes of representation are high, where the stakes of grammar are high, where if you get this detail wrong, you're gonna lose everything. And I love that aspect of the writing, and it's a challenge for myself because it literally forces me to, I think, to go all in or don't do this at all, because I really do think there are other things you could be doing with your life that I could be doing in my life. And so if I'm going to sit down and commit to this narrative, to this nonfiction piece, to this whatever, you have to make sure it's worth your while, because you could be spending this time with your friend, I could be spending this time with my wife, I could be spending this time with my family, I could be going for a walk. So this, when I sit down to write something, I make sure that it really matters to me. And my process, I guess, if that makes sense, maybe it's abstract or maybe it doesn't make sense.
No, actually,
but my process,
it makes perfect sense. You've actually kind of clarified one little thing,
Yeah.
So in the world, most times when people share information, there's a assumption of a certain kind of knowledge base. Right? So for example, a lot of, I mean, when I was working on my book, I was reading a lot of essays, and I was reading a lot of books on writing essays, and just writing in general. So like a Stephen King on writing, or a Mary Kerr on the art of memoir, or Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird, which is probably my favorite out of all of them. So everybody will say to you, write about, create a character and familiarize yourself with the character. Just by you saying, like, you put those notes down and you're like, I'm going to write a story about this person. And then just kind of thinking about that constantly and every day, kind of coming back to, who is this person? It's a small thing, but I was like, yeah, actually. Because what's always kind of messed with me is like, they're like, create a character. And I'm like, but how do I, like, where do I start? And you start thinking about it as one sitting. So the mechanics of it is, a lot of times it's just how it's explained. So you just, So I just sat there and I went, okay. So if I open a notebook and I start a notebook and I go, this is the story, this is the person I want to write a story about. And then every day I just keep adding little bits and pieces to it. And then later on I can come back and go, okay, let me actually physically write the story.
Yeah, man. That for me is my process. Nothing ever comes to me whole or complete. I think some artists have that grand vision where they can see the entire image. I am not that when it comes to my stories. It starts off with a minute detail. Often a very intimate thing that I've seen or that I know about or that I've been thinking about. So it's always a sentence that I can see someone speaking, and you put it down and you think about it for like hours in your daytime when you're not doing something, you're dreaming about it, and it slowly unravels and becomes this bigger thing. And then, I'll have a lot of notes, but I won't write a lot because I'm also trying to reach that space where I want to produce writing that matters. And so I want to spend more time writing things that are important. So this has filtered down into my day and to my life. I only send emails that are important because writing emails takes time, so much time. And when you're running an arts organization that is the first of its kind in a place like Namibia, you spend so much of your time engaged in writing and things that do not matter. And for me, with that universal panic in the world, I'm just like, does it matter? Like, literally, I ask myself a lot of things, like, does it matter? Before every issue of Duk, I always have a panic moment where I'm like, who does this matter to? Why are we doing this work? And as I found with myself, as soon as I figure out and resolve the why, the writing, the admin, whatever it is that I'm involved with becomes a lot easier. And because I understand the why, then it's just a matter of how. And once I figure out the how, then it doesn't matter when this thing happens, because I'm like, it's going to happen because I'm on the how, I'm on the journey. And that calms me.
You are listening to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast, a podcast in which I chat to Africans from a cross-section of society and sectors, including art, culture, design, business, and creativity, to name a few. I delve into their journeys, the decisions they've taken to get to where they are, how they do what they do, and everything in between. Essentially, we go wherever the conversation takes us.
And then with other things with writing, blocking out I don't know whether it happens for you, but there are moments where I know my life is not arranged so that I can write, to work on my creative work, where I know life is hectic right now. We got to put food on the table. So when COVID came along, life here in Namibia got very, very real. And, the panic of this thing, the anxiety that this thing brought about, it wasn't conducive to me really sitting down. And I just had a lot of things on my mind. And so sometimes writing can be seasonal or there are just moments in your life when you're just like, yo, you're going through a lot and you can't commit. But still, I have ideas. I jot down sentences, but I just don't, for example, do the follow through part because I've got deadlines to meet. I've got things to do. But I always know from a place of comfort within myself. So this is the other side of that panic.
Yeah.
The other side of that panic, I have this weird sense of comfort that I will come back to this thing when the moment, when time presents itself. And that is like that is the antithesis of that panic. Like time is running out. And then there's also like, but time will also come along in the future and you'll be able to come to this thing. And so that for me is very helpful. And then like you, I love reading about craft. I love reading how other writers write. So I spend a lot of my time reading like a lot of writer interviews, and I love conducting writer interviews as well. So that I find makes my writing better as well, just to hear how other people engage with it. And then, the magic of reading, man, like, fuck, there's so many awesome stories and books in this world that you just like, you read and you feel icky and you're like, wow, I wrote trash. Look at this book. And it's, yo, man, that stuff is amazing. Like, this is such a wonderful, I haven't had this conversation with anybody in I don't know. So it's wonderful to get back to reading. And that, I think, Coach, is the thing that saves my writing a lot. When I'm not writing, I'm always assured. This is just the wonderful world of writing. I'm always assured to be reading something damn good by someone out in the world. And so that's why I'm always like, I always feel, even though there's that some sense of like panic, there's always like, yo, but I read this essay that was hectic, or I read this poem, and I keep coming to this poem by Hanif Abdurrafiq. It's not like Nikola Tesla knew all those people were gonna die when he's writing a poem about, I don't know whether you've seen The Prestige.
No.
By Christopher Nolan. Yeah, no, but he's writing about a character in the film, and the poem, I revisited it last night and I was like, damn, this stuff is like made of like cosmic dust. This is like the shit that binds the universe together. And when I come to those instances of writing, I feel a lot calmer, and I feel more at peace with myself. And I'm like, this is what I'm trying to create. And so if now is not the right moment, relax. That moment will come if you're working towards it. That type of thing. And
I love his book on A Tribe Called Quest.
Yeah, I figured you would, man, because you're 50.
So I've got that book, and then so I read that one first, and then there's, I can't remember what it's called. I think he wrote it before.
The Crown Ain't Worth Much.
Was it that? I think he's written what, 3 books or 2 books? There's one that was, it's basically like his.
They won't kill us until they kill us.
That one,
yeah.
Which is around growing up and stuff, and I'm like, I loved that.
I'm looking forward to yours because I really do love memoirs. Not only memoirs, but like Black or African people, but I love memoirs. It's interesting to see the moments in writers' lives or people's lives that they choose to write about. You come from a nonfiction background, maybe, but it is exactly the same thing like fiction, because we deliberately choose what we're going to portray or the narratives we're going to tell. And I'm always interested in like what people write about in memoirs. Like, you've lived this half-century life, and I'm curious to know, like, what moments in your 365 times 50 have you decided like, oh, these are worth publishing, or this is worth writing about? It's exactly the same thing like with me. Like, I'm gonna write this line about this grandmother who has 8 kids from 8 different men. I mean, like, it's the same. It's like reverse, but it's the same. And so I loved They Can't Kill Us Until They Kill Us, because one, that title got me like in the bookshop. I was like, what the hell is this? And then I read it in the bookshop. I was like, I gotta buy this. And then Tribe Called Quest, I love it because I also, I grew up around old school rap as well, so I enjoyed that. And I liked The Crown Ain't Worth Much, his debut collection of poetry.
So that I actually haven't read. I must actually get that.
Yeah. And then he's got a new one coming out called A Fortune for Your Disaster. Like, this man just spits out bars in titles, and I'm like, who comes up with this stuff? And so I like that, man. I love that. And I like yours because it says, listen to your footsteps. And it's like, it's this weird mantra that not mantra, but I found this song by this jazz band from New York called the Menahan Street Band.
Okay.
And they've got this song called You Make the Road by Walking. And this song, interestingly, when it was released, was one of the most sampled songs, I think, of that era at the time. But you will know the chorus line, the chorus of this jazz song. It's an instrumental because it's what Jay-Z uses in Rock Boys.
Okay.
So that's what they came up with, the original song of that. But I love that song, but I also love the title of the idea behind it. You make the road by walking.
Walking, absolutely.
And so, and so I was fine when I saw your title for your thing. I was like, this feels like the kind of thing I'm going to enjoy, because I really do believe, like, as soon as you take the first step, like, the path shows up in front of you, which is like weird. Yeah.
So with your novel, The Eternal Audience of One. You're dealing with the day-to-day of life, right? But when you sit on the outside, it was okay. So you wrote it in 2016. It was published. When did Blackbird publish it?
July 2019.
So 2019, and now it's like, it feels like it's gone over that. There's that particular, but there's like a particular hurdle. It feels like it's gone beyond. It's being able to jump over that hurdle, and the hurdle is if we look at, I think if we look at a lot of literature, particularly over the last couple of years, so the Teju calls, who I'm a huge fan of, but they're all based in the US, right? Or Europe, or they have the relationships, even if they move between the two spaces. So it's easier, to a certain extent, it's easier for them to kind of break out of the boundaries. Like, so when you look at what's on the New York Times Top 100, a New York Times bestseller list, right? And it's not that it's better writing, it's just they happen to be there.
Geography.
Right?
Geography is a big factor
we're
in
here.
literature.
Maybe if a journalist who reviews books came across your book by accident, they'll go, hey, actually, we must put this on the list, right? But it really feels like you're breaking through that ceiling.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate you saying that. What you said about where you are and where you're writing from, I didn't realize what big factors those play in, like, writing, like what stories get recognized. And yes, it is hard to get to be published from everywhere, but it is especially hard to be published from Maseru. Like, it is especially hard to be published from Eswatini. It is especially hard. Central African Republic, Namibia. It is hard to be published from these places. And so the book's journey has really been an education for me in all the hardships that a lot of writers face, because I've seen a lot of these things. To be published by Blackbird in Joburg was not easy. It came with a lot of pressure because I wasn't in Joburg, and promotion was very hard to do when you're not living in that place. Everything else that has come since has also been a challenge because you're not in these geographic places. These things happen. But for me, I cannot lie to you that it is something that was important to happen in my life, because for me, it has always seemed like life, in order to happen, must happen over there. It must happen in Joburg, in Cape Town, in New York, in London. And I kid you not, when I was going through the rejection cycle, every writer goes through it, of the novel, I was like, I'm going to sell everything that I own, whatever that is. I'm going to cash out my pension and I'm going to buy this ticket to like London or New York, whatever. New York obviously was like my first. I'm like, and I'm going to peddle this thing from corner to corner and knock on doors or whatever. You know, stupid childish dreams.
Yeah.
But it seemed like that was going to happen elsewhere. And then by some weird stroke of luck and good fortune, I got to not leave. I was able to have all of these things happen from here. And I didn't think that was possible. And I still don't know how it is possible, how to replicate that process for similarly placed individuals. I know Duke is one attempt to do that. Like, I got discovered by an American agent from a literary magazine. So I was like, wait, these things matter. Like, these things matter to people. And so if you start this thing, if it takes off, how many other Namibian or African writers can be launched to this thing? And so I'm still learning, I'm still trying to figure out the mathematics behind it. Like, how did I get here so that we can replicate this for me, for everyone else? But yeah, geography is such a big part in literature. And I remember one of the most bruising rejections I got earlier. An agent was really interested in the manuscript and they were like, are you in Namibia? And then I'm like, yes. And then I'm like, yeah, I live here. And then they were like, well, why are you still there? Like move. And I was like, I just can't move to wherever the heck it is that you are. Like, I can't move to Portland, Oregon, just like this. And then it was like, and then I remember the conversation we had, and that brought to me the stark reality of like some stories, just by virtue of where the writer lives, will never see the light of day. And it is both tragic, but for me, it is also hints at opportunity. You have to prospect where no one else is digging. You have to avoid the gold rush, because once that gold rush moves on, things are gonna, towns are left dead and destitute. You always have to take the road least traveled. Always go look for stories where other people are not looking for them. And so that's the idea behind Duk. We publish Namibian short stories because Namibian writers, because not many people publish Namibian writers, and oftentimes before us, no one has encountered Namibian fiction on the page.
Yeah.
But we also link it to African writing and writers from elsewhere, because I am so curious now more than ever about what writers from elsewhere on the continent and in the African diaspora are producing. So it's like, what are people in Gaborone writing? What are people in Lolwe writing? I mean, we have our editor from Eswatini, Zanta. Like, I was like, but clearly there must be writers in Eswatini because there are people there. Yeah, and so that curiosity to link up with other literary traditions is very important to me, and it's part of the journey. But as for breaking through, thank you for like the kind words, my brother. And I'm trying to figure out how this happens and how to replicate it for like similarly placed writers, because only that way can we get like all the wonderful stories that are being produced, like appreciated further afield, man. Because I mean, I think your memoir should be read outside your community. I read Making of Avatasland by
Jamil.
And I was like, this should be read outside of this community because it resonates.
Yeah.
Like that resonant effect is like the amazing thing of story. I'm like, this should travel. And I'm trying to figure out, why don't stories travel? How can we make them travel? Is it marketing? Is it funding? Is it the writing? Is it the language? Is it, I don't know. Figuring out that maths is hard, but on the journey, man.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
I think on that note.
And you, wait. I got questions for you, fam.
What do you mean you got questions?
I got questions for you. When you are writing your memoir, when you picked out moments in your life that you want to write about, how did you approach those moments with honesty, first of all, like factual honesty, like this happened, but then also the sincerity aspect of like turning it into a narrative that someone else could read, where you're not tempted to heighten sensations or deepen traumas for the sake of like the narrative.
No,
I
really.
ask because in fiction, we have no rules. We say lie and lie hard, my friend. So I was curious about that.
I think from my transition, I need to learn how to do that, because I've always told stories and I've always shared. The way I give advice is to go, okay, this happened to me when I was 18 years old, and this is how it went down, and this is what I did, and hopefully you'll walk away with something from that. So I've always kind of shared those things. I also find that sometimes what I hold close to my chest, for other people is just something that you just share. And what I share, some people interpret that as being extremely vulnerable. And I've realized over the years that, somebody will think that I've laid my soul bare. But for me, it was just, that's what it was. That's what happened. Right. So in terms of writing, it was really just, anytime something popped into my head, like I'd make a note of it. And I mean, I think I write to a certain extent the way I speak. So the first step was literally just pouring everything onto the page. And because because you'll see, it's not, I mean, some things are longer, some things are shorter, have some poetry in there. It's not chronological. It's more themed around topics. But when I was writing, I didn't worry about any of that. I literally just, if it popped into my head, I sat down and I wrote it. And it was only later when we were on my second draft, because initially I was going to work the flow, and then I realized I was too close to it. So the editor eventually did it. So the editor did it and then sent it back, and I was like, okay, this makes sense. I took some things out, and I took some things out more because it didn't feel like there was enough, or it didn't feel like it had a place within it, as opposed to the content of it.
And then in the removing of things, or in the addition of things, or in the reworking of things, do you still feel like your memoir is still nonfiction? Because I'm convinced, it's the theory I'm developing, and I'm saying that if it's not to the inch second factual, it's fiction. It's all fiction. I don't know, like nonfiction feels weird because I'm like, but you're still imagining.
Yeah, like, I mean, so many people have written about memory, right? So Basi Ikpi's book, I'm Lying, But I'm Not Lying. I don't know if you've read that.
I know the title, but I haven't read it yet.
Okay, I mean, but I've known Basi for some years from the poetry scene, and we got to know each other. But I'm also a huge Neil Gaiman fan. He writes about it. Zadie Smith has also written about it. Like, memory is a strange thing, right? Because also I have stories. I can tell you the same story word for word 5 years apart. So you kind of go through an experience, and if you are a storyteller, gradually that becomes a story that you tell at various intervals. Now, sitting down 20 years from now, you don't know what you added to embellish, like the words that you use. You go from I fell down the stairs to I tumbled head over heels down the stairs, right? Like, you started off with, yo man, I fell down the stairs yesterday, to now when it's part of a broader story, you've added these things. So it's I guess it's trying to be as true to the occasion as possible, but also my approach was more about what I learned from experiences as opposed to the experience itself. So I share the experience, or I share the moment, but I spend more time talking about what I walked away from, what I walked away with. So for example, like the title, Listen to Your Footsteps, that was my title right from the beginning. But that comes from sprinting. I used to be a sprinter. When I was in Germany, my coach used to say, listen to your footsteps. So how he trained us was to listen to our footsteps, because there's a certain rhythm. And I specialized in 100 meters. I did 100 and 200, but I specialized in 100. So there's a particular sound to your steps from when the gun goes till you end the race. Because firstly, you're leaning forward and your steps are closer together. And then as you come up, they spread out because you're stride length. And so because I've been trained to do that, and then years later I had operations on my leg, and I have bad leg days. I have days where my foot slaps down and I hear it. But so I talk about that, but even in writing, I realize, it's a weird form of mindfulness. Because I have moments when I'm walking and I'm in that moment because I'm hearing my footsteps. And that applies to life in general. So it applies to other situations. So it was less about the experiences and more about what I gained out of the experiences. So I guess I had a bit more wiggle room to not be totally factual. But at the same time, like you're saying, we tell ourselves stories all the time. And after a while, you don't know what's real and you don't know what's not.
Yeah, this is true. And then, you have all of this vast experience in the writing for a living, working writer type of thing. And you've now got your memoir. I'm curious to know, what is the thing that you want to write that is so out there, or that, I don't know, Chimamanda and Marlon James call it a fuck you book. Like, what is the thing that you're itching to write that you've maybe never had the courage to write? What is it? Or are you completely fearless as a writer?
I've always wanted to write a novel. Like, I used to joke and say, I think I have one great African novel in me and then I'm done, right? I've always wanted to be able to write a novel. I wouldn't say I'm afraid of it. It's more making the decision and then just learning the craft of it. That's why I was like, okay, I think the next step is to start writing short stories. Unlike you, where you just like, okay, let me write a long ass novel. For me, it's okay. I did this, and now I've done this, and my book and the format was easier for me. So the way it's, somebody asked me, was I deliberate? I was like, yo, man, like it's easy for me to just sit down and write what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling about stuff. That's easy for me. So it was just a matter of having the discipline to write a whole bunch of things, right?
Yes.
So now I'm like, okay, I've done that. So now maybe let me mess with short stories, because the alternative would have been to, we were talking about Hanif's book, right? Like he did with the Tribe Called Quest book. Because I love music and I'm fascinated by artists, and that needs a bit more research. So I toyed with writing a non-fiction book that requires me now to go out and actually research stuff and take my views and take my theories around a particular area. So for example, the media, because I've worked in the media for the last 15 years and I spend a lot of time researching and looking at how it's evolving and the different platforms and all of this stuff. So it was either that, but it's like actually short stories, then get to the point where I write a novel, whether it's published, no matter what happens with it. But the first step is being able to go, I'm going to take a story and I'm going to take a reader from one point to another point. Because I enjoy novels. Like I enjoy fiction. I read very specific stuff. But I've always read for entertainment. So it's like for me to be able to, for me to be able to do that I guess would be the next step. But
what novels have you enjoyed or would you recommend over the podcast, man? That you've enjoyed, that you feel like these ones spoke to me for X, Y, Z or the other.
So my thing is, I'm also very specific. So for example, like I'm a Neil Gaiman fan, like I said, right?
Yeah.
So I've read most of Neil Gaiman's, Neil Gaiman's books, like American Gods.
Yeah.
Like I love that book, right?
Yeah.
And I also go through phases. So like I had an Anne Rice phase.
So the one with the vampire Lestat.
Yeah, so the vampire Lestat.
Yeah.
So I have most of them, but I read that entire series and I followed it for ages. I'm rereading. So last year at the beginning of lockdown, I started rereading Frank Herbert's Dune.
You know what? The way you just said it, I was hoping you would say that, but Dune is the only book, that and Tolkien, that where you have to say the whole thing. J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings or Frank Herbert's Dune. You can't just say I was reading Dune. No, it's Frank Herbert's Dune.
So I'm reading it's the fourth book.
Yeah.
I think it's the fourth book in the series. I just started reading that.
How epic is that stuff, man? Like Dune was, I'm not saved, but Dune was one of the works that saved my soul in high school when I was a lost child.
So I'll say the one writer as we're talking that pops into my mind who I absolutely love is Paul Beatty.
My friend, which one? The White Boy Shuffle?
So I mean, I have all of them. I have all of them. And
which one was he flexing on the most?
So White Boy Shuffle will always have a special place because that was the first one I read, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the few books where I laughed out loud.
Dude.
In the prologue. Right?
Yeah.
The first time I read it, I mean I've read it countless times now, but I actually laughed out loud. And so I have the full collection. Mohale got my sellout signed for me.
Nice, because when he was here at Cape Town.
When he was down here in Cape Town. So he also, during lockdown, because I read a lot of nonfiction, and I also read, I read some productive stuff. So for example, 2019, I was reading around productivity and time. So I was reading a lot of books around managing tasks, making time, that sort of stuff. And I read a lot of, to a certain extent, some self-help, but for example, I mean, Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now. I'm a big, John Kehoe has this book, Quantum Warrior, which I've used and I've been through his workshop. So those are the things that I use to navigate life. So every now and then I'll jump back into something fiction just to, to relieve my mind. 2 years ago, I started rereading poetry again. I keep looking here because what's left of my books, because most of my books are in storage now because we just moved house. So I'm also looking at what I came back with or what I moved with as opposed to just put into boxes.
Yeah. Word. No, that's interesting, man. It's interesting that you brought up Paul Beatty. And the first time I encountered Paul was The Sellout, just after he'd won the Booker. And I remember reading it, and I thought, this is the most harebrained, imaginative, lyrical performing writer I've ever read on the page. Blew my mind with that story. Absolutely hilarious. And then I started reading him in reverse. So the White Boy Shuffle was next. And then it was so weird when I read that, then the White Boy Shuffle, purely because of the title, then Slumberland, and then Tough was the last one that I read. Okay. And when you put them in chronology, it's almost like you can see him in Tough, he's like finding out the type of voice and the stories that he wants to tell. And then in the White Boy Shuffle is like the year when he's like approaching his peak. Like he's like on the way as a writer, as a performer. And then in Slumberland, that was like pure flexing. Like this man flexed in Slumberland on a level of writing that I can't even put in words. But then the Sellout was like where the world caught onto like just how dope Paul Beatty is.
But so the thing is, in terms of chronology,
yeah,
it's White Boy Shuffle, then Tough.
First, yeah. Then Tough, yeah.
Then Tough, then Sellout, and then Slumberland. But and so what drew me to him, so he was a poet. He used to perform. I have his poetry collection that I had my younger sister looked for it for me for ages and bought it at a secondhand shop in the UK.
Which one is it? Big Bang, Take Little Bang. Joker Deuce.
Yeah.
Joker Deuce, yeah.
So I think that was his first poetry collection. So when I read his books, it wasn't like I got it because I also was coming from the poetry scene and looking at his poetry. I have poems that are written in his style from then.
Man. Yeah, man.
Because I was being influenced, because I was finding his stuff online after I read White Boy Shuffle, and I'm like, he has a very interesting way of writing poetry. Then when you read his books, then it's like, okay, yeah, that's you can see the
extension,
and the evolution and the expansion from there.
Yeah. So I think sorry, I got the chronology of the works wrong, but I remember when I first came across the Sellout, I didn't know this type of thing was possible. And, this is what I mean by like, I think I'm always discovering something new in books, but he was doing something that I thought only one type of writer could do. And for him, the other writer that I really enjoyed immensely was Marlon James with A Brief History of Seven Killings. I opened these two books. Both of them have the same effect on me when you're like, what the heck?
Yeah.
I open them, you're like, what the? And you're like, I gotta go home and sit with this and think about it. And man, you know that description where I was like, I want to reach a stage as a writer where I have the confidence to write a sentence like Paul Beatty in the Sellout. He has this scene where like one of these old men talks to the main character, and then he creep walks away with a 4 o'clock leaning. And I was just like, he describes this man creep walking away. And I was like, whoever, that kind of imagination that translates to the page, that is like the goal, the absolute pure goal, like imagination where you like write and you're like, this stuff is crazy, man. Anyway, but
I actually want to read, I need to read that Marlon James again, because I bought his, did you read what's it, Red Wolf, something? Which is
Black Leopard Red
which is supposed to be a trilogy. So I bought the first one, absolutely loved it. I've been waiting for the next one. It's taking forever. I reread the first one, I think beginning of the year. And now it seems the next one is out, but we don't have it, or it's on pre-order.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay,
it's gonna be a while.
So I'm gonna read that one, and they're thick. I mean, it's big books.
Dude,
I'm like, if I read that one, I'm gonna be stressing about the third one because he told us in the beginning it's a trilogy.
But the good thing is that he's still a young man. He's not this George R.R. Martin people not writing the books or whatever. So that is the only James book that I have, because I have all of his books. That's the only one that I haven't read. Specifically for the reason, because I'm like, I'm going to wait until the second one comes out. I'm not like you. I'm not mature, my friend. I wait for the whole season. I wait for the whole season. I wait for the whole season to come out.
Yeah, that's the way to do it, because my way is just frustrating.
But yeah, man, I mean, that it's wonderful to just like at least be able to share in this conversation with you. Like, thanks so much for just talking to me, Coach. Like, actually, I started following you when I was in university, which is weird. This was like in I was there 2009 when Twitter came out. And I think I followed you in 2012-ish.
Wow.
And then I was off Twitter for a very, very long time. But I mean, I've always known about your work in like magazine writing and stuff. And so it is weird that now, many years later, you and I are sitting on a podcast, you from Joburg, me from Windhoek, and we're having this conversation about writing and craft, man. So, you might not know it, but your work resonates and it's appreciated by people you will never even meet. Yeah, and that's writing, man. I think I'm one of the few who's fortunate enough to reach out to you personally and say, like, we know you're writing, fam. Like, so you're doing the damn thing. You're doing the damn thing.
No, thanks, bro. But yeah, no, thank you for your time, man.
I appreciate it, man.
I think down the line when you're in line for the book and that sort of stuff, then we can do this again. We can do this again.
No, my friend. No, let's rather say let's continue listening to our footsteps, make the path that we're walking. And I'm looking forward to like your next work, man. I'm looking forward to seeing your journey, looking forward to seeing what you produce. And let's talk about Duke, man, because half the name, we need to get you in these magazine pages. I'm gonna hustle. Look at me propositioning you right on your own podcast.
Yeah, I have been following Duke, and it's like what I like about it. So it's one of those spaces where it's like, okay, if it gets to the point where I can in any little way contribute to something because I believe in the power of what it's doing. Like, I'm always happy to do that.
Yeah, let's talk about your short fiction when you're ready, man.
All right, bro.
Your writing will always have a home wherever I'm at, man.
Cool, man. All right,
For
thanks,
sure.
bro.
Yeah, be safe. Look after yourself and your family, man.
You too.
Yeah.
The Listen to Your Footsteps podcast is produced by Zebra Culture. If you have ideas of what we can do better, people you'd like us to have a conversation with, or would just like to share a thought, you can email me on info@zebraculture.com. To check out past episodes, go to kojobuffer.com/podcasts. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share with a friend. If you'd like to get a copy of the book, Listen to Your Footsteps, check out kojobuffer.com/book. There are details on the various spaces it's available at. I'd also appreciate it if you could leave a review or comment wherever you listen to your podcasts. Finally, there's the Zebra Culture by Kojo Buffer newsletter, where on a weekly basis, I share a curated list of articles, playlists, videos, etc. that have caught my attention. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it.